I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. This is an important issue for our community, and I think it's important that everyone's voices be heard. I'd also like to thank the owners' representatives of the property for attending tonight. They are not legally bound to attend and are here, and I do appreciate that as well. We've received 3 letters of support for saving the theater that I will provide to the stenographer. Some of you may be reading these into the record later, but just for the record, I'm putting on a letter from Joanne Jackson, a letter from Gail Wall, and a letter from Lisa Wilson Grant into the record. And we'll share those with the commissioners. Speakers will be called in the order of the sign-up sheet that I have, and we will go through that whole list. And then at the end, if you did not sign up and you want to speak, there'll be an opportunity for you to sign up and speak as well. So don't worry if you didn't sign up. I have not set a time limit this evening on any speaker, but I would appreciate if each speaker could be, to the point. Pretty much, I think everyone here is a volunteer, so we're appreciative if people can stick to the points and stay civil and stay as brief as they feel comfortable with. All right, and other than that, please say your name and your address for the record as you speak at the podium over here. And with that, I will start with the first speaker that signed up, and that's Steve Nevis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Steve Nevis with the Nevis Law Group in Westport at 237 Post Road West. This is a matter, I think you know, that affects both Westport and Norwalk. I represent the Lucille Lortel and Waldo Mayo Foundation, who asked this Commission to help my clients and this city save the historic White Barn Theater from the wrecking ball. And at the present rate, unless something occurs, that could happen as early as March 23rd, just barely 3 weeks from today. I want the Commission to know that I was born and I grew up in Norwalk. I went to school here and, in fact, in this building. I served as president of the Norwalk Symphony Orchestra. My roots run deep in this city, and I'm really proud to be able to be here tonight to help my clients and the city preserve one of the city's most valuable cultural icons. And so many of them have been lost, as you well know. This one should be restored as a living theater. It has been at the White Barn that some of the theater's greatest actors and playwrights came to try out new works and ideas, many of which were destined for Broadway and beyond and are continued to be performed today. You may hear tonight from some who claim that Mrs. Lortel did not want the White Barn Theater to continue. That is just plain wrong, incorrect, and false. In her will, she said specifically that she wanted the White Barn to continue, and anyone can go down to the probate court and look in the records. It's there. It's in black and white. It's a simple declaratory sentence. She specifically instructed that the White Barn Theater remain open and functioning. Some may also claim to you that the barn can't be fixed and should come down, that it's not any good anymore. That's untrue as well. The barn can be fixed, it can be restored, brought up to code, and used. My clients, who include one of Mrs. Lortel's grandnephews, are hard at work to raise the millions sought by its present owner to sell the property. They ask you to recommend that they be allowed the time they need to raise such a sum, which is in the millions, since much, if not all, of those funds are likely to come from grants from nonprofit organizations, and as you well know, that is not a process that happens overnight. They just don't write a check. Just critical to all of this, and I hope you will bear this in mind, everyone will bear it in mind, the taxpayers of the city and of the state already have a huge investment in the White Barn property. They have spent $750,000 to protect the land and water around the theater by putting it in conservation. No one may ever build on a substantial portion of that land. So a private foundation asks you to give them the chance to do the rest, save the barn, save the rest of the property. If you will permit, I would like to introduce Vincent Curcio. He was manager of the White Barn Theater for 25 years. He knows the role of the White Barn and has played an important role in American theater history, and Mr. Curcio is here tonight. Right behind me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. I really appreciate being able to be here and to speak to all of you. The first thing I want to do is to read a letter from our greatest stars, one of our greatest stars at the White Barn, Miss Donna McKechnie, whom you know as the star of A Chorus Line and many other things. And she was a top star whenever we had her at the White Barn. People came from far and near to see her shows. She's not here tonight because she's on a plane to Los Angeles to perform with the symphony orchestra. But she writes, "Dear Vincent, I wish I could be with you on Wednesday to support you and everyone who is trying to save and preserve the White Barn Theater. It is an absolute crime and a travesty to lose this important part of our cultural heritage. This theater, as Miss Lortel beautifully envisioned, is not only important to the community to see wonderful artists bringing exciting new work to life, but for all people who love theater and artistic exploration. I will be forever grateful for the opportunity to try out a new one-woman musical with text adapted by Christopher Durang at the White Barn. And thanks to that beginning, I have performed it all over this country since then. Also, to be able to perform in Sheba, the musical, which originated at the White Barn, and with the great Donald Sadler choreographing, it was one of the highlights of my career. I'm saying a prayer and wishing with all my might that we can please save this theater. In loving spirit, Donna McKechnie." Wonderful to know that such a marvelous person and marvelous artist is on our side. Lucille Lortel was a creator. Now, what is a creator? A creator is someone who puts something there where there was nothing before. What did she create? Well, she and very few other people, Joseph Papp and Theodore Mann, began the off-Broadway movement in the early 1950s. And then 10 years later, with Joe Chino and Ellen La Mama Stewart, she began the off-Broadway theater movement. Where did this all begin? It began right here at the White Barn Theater. In 1947, an actor named Philip Houston came to her with a script called The Painted Wagon, and he said, "Oh, Lucille, it's such a nice script, but it's not a Broadway thing, but I'd like to help it along, so could you please ask some of your actor friends to come and see it, and I'll bring my actors up, and we'll give a reading, and you'll give a little collation afterwards." And she said, "Sure, fine, why not?" So she did this on July 27th, 1947. And in the audience was the greatest of all theatrical agents for plays, Audrey Wood. And she said, "Lucille, this is kind of great. You know, I like this. All the theater people come, and it's something different, but it's relaxed. And I have a few scripts for you." And so she gave them to Lucille. And by the end of the season, she had done a complete season. And it caused quite a ruckus. Her husband, Lou Schweitzer, the estimable chemical engineer and businessman, he was in Paris. He knew nothing about this. He was having his morning croissant and coffee, and he opened Variety and saw, "Woman starts theater in backyard." And he realized who the woman was. Can you imagine how long it took him to book passage back to the United States and be part of the excitement? Well, he did. And that season was followed by several others. And the White Barn was like a playhouse that they were using at that time, so they put up drapes and this and that to little bits of scenery to do little plays that they were doing. One of those early people was somebody you might have heard of called Eva Marie Saint, who won the Oscar for On the Waterfront. But there were many, many others. Zero Mostel was in bad odor at that time because of red channels. Couldn't find work. She gave him work to do at the White Barn Theater, as she did later on with such distinguished people as Leo Jaffe and Kim Hunter. They couldn't work because of red channels, but she put them on in her shows. And when asked why, she said, "It's my theater. I'll put on whatever I feel like and whoever I feel like." This is a woman who was always a woman who brought courage with her. She did black plays and black musicals in that whole period of time when there was so much social unrest. And then she always had new people. Why, one of them was someone who was new to this part of the world, new to America. He was named Jeffrey Holden. And he and his beautiful bride, Carmen de Lavallade, were married at the White Barn in 1953, and she supported their efforts and their programs for the rest of Jeffrey's life and the rest of her life. Now, we had people, Tennessee Williams gave us a pre-version of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof that no one had ever seen. It was put together by a man named Henry Hughes. They did that here. He had a play called The Purification, and they did a dance and music version of that. And there are pictures at the White Barn, well, they were at the White Barn, on the walls, of Tennessee standing there with Lucille and with Audrey Wood and all this sort of thing. This didn't happen once or twice. This happened constantly. You heard about the Theater of the Absurd. Ionesco, she brought him here to do his play, The Chairs, when he was completely unknown, and then it went on to worldwide fame in the English language theater. Samuel Beckett's plays were done here. She got friendly early in the late 40s with Sean O'Casey, who was on Bad Luck. Not only did she do his plays, she also supported him. That was the way she was. Later on, Athol Fugard had a flop in London, and he couldn't go back to South Africa because he was persona non grata, and he couldn't stay in London because he had a disaster. She brought him here. He stayed in the office I was in for so many years. He didn't sleep on the bed. He had a little cardboard suitcase tied up with string, and he insisted on sleeping on a mat on the floor until Lucille, of course, put him up in the plaza. But it was these kinds of things, and it was constant. She ran that theater, and I was so glad to be associated with her, to go to all the readings and discuss things and rehiring people and having ideas of what was going to go on here. Things constantly did. Now, and till the very last. In 1998 was her last season, and she was there, and she sat for every single performance in the same seat she had always sat in for her entire life. And yes, that's Lucille's thing. Yes. But she did it, and I wouldn't start a performance until she was there. She always came completely dressed up, completely interested in the future of things. When she had a Sam Shepard play off Broadway, and it was a complete disaster, it was around Christmas time, she said, "No, I can't just close it in 1 week. This is Sam Shepard. I must give him his due as an artist." And that's what she did. So many people, the leading man from Hand to God that you saw on Broadway, he started at the White Barn in a production of the Gospel According to St. Luke that was directed by Stuart Vaughan. Before anybody knew him, he was so glad to be with us. That's the way it was, and that's the way she wanted it to continue to be. She loved her White Barn, and she loved the artists who came, she loved the audiences who came and were interested in what happened. Now, there are some people, one in particular, whose letter you might have read someplace, a woman named Blanche Martin, who said that she didn't want this theater to go on. Well, Blanche was a 60-year friend of Lucille's and a good friend. but she and Lucille had very differing views on a lot of things, and this was one of them. Lucille, as Attorney Nevis has said to us, put it in her will that she wanted the White Barn to continue. You can see it, it's a matter of public record, you can go down to City Hall and see it says that. She provided funding for it and something else. For both her theater in New York and the one out here, she had an artistic advisory board. Now the one in New York had a lot of famous names, Marshall and Mason and Anna Strasberg and so on. And the one out here had 3 names: Donald Sadler, the great choreographer, Mary Henderson, the great theater historian, and who was the manager, so I guess that's how I got on with those people. But why would she appoint these things if she did not intend the theater to continue? And the trustees of the foundation continued it for 5 years after her death. I was the manager for 25 years, 20 with her, and 5 years after her death. One might want to know why they made a change in policy. I don't know, it was never explained to me. And only those people could answer it. But the theater itself was intended somehow to continue. When it was sold to, I believe, Mr. Fieber, in 2006, he became the owner, he wanted to build properties, he sold it to the Friends School, and that didn't all work out, and now we are here. Discussing what the future of the White Barn Theater is to be. Now, the future, it seems to me, could be like the past. There was a lot of sweat and effort that went into that theater, and I know, because for 25 years, some of that was mine. But one never felt that one was doing work that was in any way oppressive or bone-wearying. It was a good tiredness you felt because you knew you were bringing something to the theater community and to the community here in Norwalk and Westport. And that could happen again. The last time I was in it, we did a memorial for Hala Stoddard in 2012, our beloved colleague and neighbor here. And the place was in wonderful shape. I couldn't believe what I saw when I went up into the theater. All you needed to do was put up drapes and put up some lights, and you could get the toilets working, and you could have had some kind of a program. And I think that since the building, some things have been done to the building, some with proper permits and others, it seems not that way. But in any case, you can put it back together again, and I'll bet you that it would be less than you would think to change it around again. At Stratford, Connecticut, they brought in all the union people to take a look at that building, and they found out that it would not cost $10 million to open their doors, but $1 million, and that's for a 1,500-seat theater. Something like that, as far as I know, has never been done with the White Barn Theater. But I think that our audiences and our actors have gone home at night, gone home from their White Barn sojourn, feeling that something good, something positive, something forward-looking had gone home with them. Nietzsche once said in the first lesson of aesthetics that the good is easy. Divine things run on light wings. Well, we did have that feeling at the White Barn. We can have it again for the community, for the artists. And I invite you of the community to join with the community of artists to run with light feet also, and to feel that divine spirit of uplift that only the arts can bring. And please do it on Miss Lortel's beautiful property, which has a gorgeous 1.8-acre pond, and on that pond there are birds who nest and who feed and who swim and who fly. There are beautiful fish in the pond. Little boys, I was always having to get rid of them because of insurance. They would come and with their little fishing rods and their lines and whatever and catch fish. And you could see them as they swam around. There were animals coming all the time. You could see
welcome ones like squirrels and maybe not so welcome ones like badgers, but deer, all of those creatures living there. There were beautiful flowers for everybody to enjoy. And those things are still there, unless those things are in some way destroyed or diminished by the exigencies of profit, the exigencies of home building. We have a lot of homes, new homes here in Norwalk, oh my Lord. But how many open spaces like this do we still have that we can preserve for ourselves and for the children and the people who come after us? So what I'm asking you to do, please, is to consider all these things and to do what is the right thing for your community, for the Connecticut community, for the larger worldwide theater community. Please let it continue to live and flourish. Thank you.
I think we have a presentation from Waldo Mayo, is that correct?
In that order? In that order?
No, that whoever's on the sign-up sheet in that order.
Oh, I thought he was part of the first two things, but that's fine. Marilyn Robinson.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marilyn Robinson. I'm former chairman of the Norwalk Historical Commission under Mayor Alex Knopp, and Gail Wallen served on that commission during the time that we were having demolition delays to save many historical properties here in Norwalk. So I'd just like to speak first. I'm going to read the letter from Gail, but I would like to speak first to say that in my experience and in Gail's experience, and Maria Bryant, who's here as well, the demolition delay does provide a very important opportunity for at least the parties to get together and talk about and decide, as David, when he read the demolition delay, that the purpose is to give adequate time for all parties to establish and present alternatives to the last possible event, which would be the demolition. So I'm here to tell you that we used it a lot. I can name lots of properties in Norwalk that did benefit from that. And so I'd like to, tell you about that and also to read Gail's letter. To the Norwalk Historical Commission, I support the preservation of the Lucille Lortel White Barn Theater from demolition for many reasons, primarily because it's the right thing to do, as Lucille Lortel's will instructed that the White Barn Theater was to continue beyond her death. The White Barn Theater can be restored to its former glory, and with tax credits available, it's a doable project. The theater can once again become the avant-garde artist's haven for students locally and nationwide. Great local and national performers have developed and polished their theatrical skills at the White Barn, and there's absolutely no reason why a rebirth of the White Barn Theater cannot happen, particularly again since Lucille Lortel's great-nephew has entered into negotiations to purchase the property to fulfill her wishes and to continue the White Barn Theater in Norwalk. The White Barn property is an extraordinary sanctuary for nature, neighbors, and an incredible waterway to the Sound, and the last of its kind. The Cranberry and Westport neighborhoods have supported the preservation of the White Barn Theater and property from day one. We have sought and received hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants from the state of Connecticut and from the city of Norwalk to protect the pond and surrounding pond acreage now in the care of the Norwalk Land Trust. Please allow the demolition delay to bring all parties to the negotiating table to preserve the Lortel White Barn Theater and continue as the Grande Dame has declared in her will. Thank you very much.
Carmen Delavande, do you mind? I would have never known.
Thank you. My name is Carmen de Lavalade. All right. I am the wife of Jeffrey Holder, who introduced me to, to Lucille. I came from Los Angeles, California, so I didn't know very much about New York or anything around it. But I know that Lucille, when she found out we were going to be married, she said, "I'll foot the bill." Therefore, Jeffrey and I were married on those beautiful grounds with the pond and the flowers and the birds and the fish. And I had the pleasure. When I listened to Vincent, I thought I am the luckiest person in the world, because I worked in a place where there were absolutely people that I treasured, and to be around that kind of history. I don't know if you know, because I performed in places that were of history, like the Metropolitan Opera, the old theater. To be around history is very valuable, and young people coming up today will have none of that. It's all gone. And I know that there are young people here, and I'm listening to Vincent, and I'm trying to take this on another thought, that history is being lost. This precious land with the wildlife it's disappearing. We can't find that anymore. What is left for the youth? They have nothing but buildings and planes and all that, but something is very precious there that has to be conserved, and I think that Lucille saw that. When I performed there, it was like being in another world because of the surroundings. And I think of the young people coming up that could come there and be a part of history, to be a part of history, to be a part of these names that are on this list, is something that I can't explain it. And I think about the young people that came this evening. What's going to happen why can't they be part of this list? It's because education is very, but being a part of the Metropolitan Opera history, to being a part of his, to me is a great honor and a great responsibility, because that is, you mean to pass down to generations. We don't pass down to anything to the young people anymore. There are a wonderful group of young people coming up. The young people that will come there will learn their craft, will have the greatest teachers. They will have the surroundings like Jacob's Pillow. I'm another part of history at Jacob's Pillow with Ruth St. Denis and Ted Shawn, and to be a part of another history. And I can see that passing down, what that does for youth. They go out and they give to the world, and this is passed down, and young people have to know their craft, but it's not only that. The arts are not just something that's just a hobby. We are problem solvers. And that is one thing that I have learned, and that the youth has learned. When you're in the theater or you're in the arts, you have to learn to solve what's around. You have to use your creative sense to create anything. I mean, I don't think there's any reason why you can't have the White Barn Theater and housing around. They can coexist together, because the people that would live around it would have a theater, they would have a park, they can go to plays, they would be a part of history. And I think people would love to live around history. But for me, I'm really thinking about the youth. And I think that they should have the privilege of being a part of history, and not have it just pick up a book and read about it. So I would like, the committee to think in those terms. Sometimes we have to think out of the box. That's what we do as artists. And that's why you have beautiful homes and beautiful clothing and beautiful art. But I'm thinking of the youth. And that is our job as people and human beings, to pass it down to the youth so that it can live. So thank you.
Irma Sandrez.
Is this Ben? Can we lower it? Yeah, well, that's where it came. Thank you. Oh, thanks. Hi, I'm Irma Sandre, and I am the senior teacher and the advisor to the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute. I still act, and I am a longtime member of the Actors Studio. When I was very, very young, in 1946, the New York City Ballet was started, and I was a protege of George Balanchine's. And we thought this would never last. And I forget what is it, 100 years or something? But we knew then, as children, starting a great ballet company, that we had to feed the next generation. This is at 16. We already knew about the next generation. Years later, I became an actor, Broadway, wherever, and I have been a member of the Actors Studio since 1967. Lucille Lortel used to come to our sessions, and any time she came, she sat in a certain chair in the first row, and we all felt wonderful. We knew that what we were doing for Lee Strasberg would have an added edge because Lucille was there. And we used to go to the White Barn in the summer and see our friends, some of us very famous, and we would see our friends develop things at Lucille's White Barn Theater. Now, all these years later, I still believe performing and passing on what I know as a performer. At the moment, I now have Lucille's great nephew in my classes who has become a wonderful, wonderful actor. And he wants this White Barn Theater to continue, not just for himself, but for everyone, to pass on what Lucille did for us. I have a lovely quote from Estelle Parsons. I'm doing a play with her at the Actors Studio, actually. And here's what Lucille writes. What a huge welcome the new White Barn Theater will receive from the New York theater community. We have missed it so much. It gave us such opportunity to do things we can't do in our commercial lives. That's a big issue with Estelle, because she is always doing something commercially, and like the White Barn Theater was, not necessarily commercially, and we use the Actors Studio that way. I want to introduce Joan Copeland, who is a marvelous actress, member of the Actors Studio, and who also had a brother, Arthur Miller, who used Lucille's White Barn Theater.
Somebody's got to teach me how to walk. What, oh, is this working? Because I couldn't understand a lot of stuff. Is this correct? Yes. Well, hello. It says here, good evening, so I have to say that. My name is Joan Copeland Miller. No, I mean Joan Miller Copeland. I'm all right, Jack. I'm an actress. Aren't I? Okay. I've worked in movies and on television and all over, but I have been most at home in the theater, not so much in the films. I have played Grand Broadway palaces, often off Broadway, major regional theaters, and wonderful eccentric houses like the White Barn. My work at the White Barn was more than a job. It was a dream come true. That beautiful space, that hallowed ground, was the creation of one of the great women of the theater, Lucille Lortel. And this creation, this dream, this White Barn, it's just too important to just let die. I'm reminded of a number of amazing women whose vision and dedication and dreams have enriched the American theater. Women like Jean Dalrymple, Armina Marshall, and Lucille Lortel. Jean Dalrymple followed. She followed her dream, and she created a company at New York City Center, which inspired theater legends like Paul Robeson, Helen, I can't write that, Anthony Quinn, Uta Hagen, and Orson Welles to work on productions still remembered and talked about today. Armina Marshall, wife of the Theater Guild founder, Lawrence Langner, dreamed of creating a theater here in Connecticut where young and established actors could both do new plays and major revivals. Armina turned over the first shovel of dirt for the Westport Playhouse, which became the most important summer stock playhouse in the country. Then the Westport Playhouse was in jeopardy. When it was in jeopardy, some years back, another amazing woman who had gotten her first big career break with the Theater Guild stepped up to the plate and saved the building and the dream. That woman, actress Joanne Woodward, along with her husband Paul Newman, made sure that the treasure that is the Westport Playhouse, Lucille Lortel's White Barn Theater, cannot disappear. It must not disappear. To paraphrase my older brother, playwright Arthur Miller, in his masterpiece, Death of a Salesman, something terrible is happening here, and attention must be paid. Attention must be paid. Lucille Lortel's vision, her dream, this beautiful White Barn Theater provides so much more than entertainment. This is a place where young actors can gain confidence and build their skills as they follow the journey of a career. This landmark theater must be allowed to go on and on and on.
I didn't know I was going to speak. I am a teacher at the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute for the last 20 years, and I've been an actor my whole life.
Could you state your name?
Mauricio Bustamante. And of course, I concur with what my fellow artists are saying, and your community obviously is willing and wanting desperately to have happen. Let us have a place where we can continue to help young artists to develop their talents. Your community is a beautiful community, and it stands to gain, of course, artistically as well as financially by having something in your community that attracts people from all over the world. All of us from New York, of course, will come up to visit this area, this beautiful, beautiful area, not just for the fine dining and the gorgeous people that live in it, but for the gorgeous art and the great, great, great legacy which was bestowed to us by such a wonderful woman. Thank you.
Eric Falkenstein.
Hi, thank you. I'm a Broadway producer and a bit of a writer, and I've heard a lot of very powerful testimony, and there's quite a bit I've heard in speaking with Gigi and Waldo and many others. There are questions that arise: why would a foundation which should have adhered to the wishes, the very express wishes of Ms. Lortel, have not done everything it possibly could to keep the theater running, et cetera. I don't think I have any particular expertise in any of those areas. I want to try to share with all of you those things about this place that make it unique, in addition to many of the other things that you've heard about it, and the way that it, I think, will contribute to the culture of Norwalk, hopefully forever. When you lose an institution like this, it's gone forever, and you can't quite say, as nice as it is to have new construction, that you can replace it in a cluster of homes. First of all, I should say, and Joan, who I've been lucky enough to meet before, and I produced a couple of Arthur's plays in the past. I was lucky to work with him when he was alive, and I in the midst of the Iraq War, I decided to produce All My Sons just after he had passed. It's a powerful play about war profiteering, basically, and the fact that Joan is here and so many others of you is really quite a testament to what you've got in Norwalk. I was born in Connecticut. I live a couple miles from here, and work primarily in New York. I spent some time in Washington, and I should just tell you that there are a few places around the country where playwrights, producers, actors, directors, and designers and other artists look to for taking their plays and their musicals and having a safe place to develop them. And they're treasures in our industry. They're absolute treasures. They include places like the Williamstown Theater Festival, which is only in the summer because Williamstown, of course, is in session with a pretty good school the rest of the year. There's the Sundance Theater Lab, which that's very different and quite distinct from the film, from all of the Film Institute and the activities and the festival, of course. But it is a distinctive theater development place, which is much, much newer. There's also places like the O'Neill that many of you know for sure. That's out by New London, and that, of course, is partly thanks to the other great playwright, American playwright, who spent some of his life in a preserved home there, or just down the road. So what I would like to say is that there are a handful of places which have been preserved, that the loss of the White Barn, the structure itself, would be tantamount to those of us who are familiar with these other places as a terrible loss in the theater family. And I'd also say that it is truly a cultural landmark that Norwalk is so lucky to have. And as I understand it, very little or perhaps none of the land now belongs to, is actually over the line in Westport, that it really is Norwalk's institution, and it's part of the reason we're here. Norwalk has some other great institutions. It obviously has a great children's museum. Stepping Stones has a great aquarium, and I don't think anyone here could imagine those being destroyed. It's probably worth noting as well now that theater development organizations from places like the O'Neill to others that are not that far away, like in Poughkeepsie, there's a place called New York Stage and Film that does summer theater development. Some of them, not the O'Neill, but some of them actually end up taking part in potential financial windfalls of the future. And what I briefly want to do is just let you know that there are ways, if what's going on in the back of your mind is these people are all nice and kind and have a good idea, a good heart, they want to preserve something, but where is all the money going to come from? There are many answers. Number one, there probably are dozens of examples where a play or a musical was developed at a theater institution, and it actually happens in New York City all the time. Institutions like the Public Theater developed numerous projects, some of them revivals. They've probably done 8 or 9 shows that I'm aware of that have made it to Broadway, some of them spectacularly successful, and I can tell you, though I don't know the details, the Public Theater has a financial stake in Hamilton, and that's going to ensure the Public Theater survival for a very, very long time. But that's just one example. So there are a lot of ways to explore. I'd be happy to answer questions down the road or whenever about how these can be structured. I heard one of the speakers say that even if some homes had to be built around it, save the theater. I think obviously the ideal thing would be to leave it preserved in its entirety, meaning the entire property. But if it can't be, at the very least, I really would urge all of you to think about what would be lost forever if in fact this building is demolished. I didn't want to go on this long, but I do want to emphasize one other thing. When I called a few of my colleagues, James Naughton, who directed Paul Newman's final production, Our Town, where did he want to rehearse it? And they took it to the Westport Playhouse, and then they took it to Broadway at the White Barn. I actually didn't know that, but Jim, who would have been here, but for the fact that he is at a meeting of Hole in the Wall Gang, which is Paul Newman's great charitable camp. So when I mentioned this to him, he said instantly, just please tell everyone that I'm absolutely in support of preservation. Same thing happened with Terrence McNally. Many of you will know him for having written the book To Ragtime, for having probably dozens of plays on and off Broadway. Some of them huge. Not too long ago, It's Only a Play was revived with Nathan Lane, Matthew Broderick, and many others. The theater industry would truly feel a great loss. And finally, as I wanted to say, I think Norwalk as a city should rest assured that there are a lot of ways to explore avenues for financial support that include future commercial productions that are spawned at the White Barn Theater. So thanks very much. I really appreciate it.
The next person's on the list actually twice, Barbara Schottenfield, and then followed by Sandy Starr.
I'm wearing black sequins because Lucille loved a particular dress that was in a show of mine back in the 80s. So this is for Lucille. Thank you. I'd like to, I should tell you who I am first. Barbara Schottenfeld. I am a composer, lyricist, and librettist for musicals. I also perform a one-woman show at times at Lincoln Center, a number of other places, the Quick Center for the Performing Arts locally. For me, the White Barn was also a magical experience. I had first heard about it when I was a Princeton student, and a couple of my colleagues couldn't believe I hadn't heard of the theater. I wrote a show when I was at school, when I was down to college, and it became very successful off-Broadway. But what I learned in the theater is then the second show is a challenge all over again. So I was developing the second show at the time called Hello, I'm Not In Right Now. Lucille appeared in the audience and came backstage and said, I'd love to continue developing that. Would you bring it to the White Barn this summer? I felt that it still needed quite a bit of my own development of it before I would bring it to the theater, especially since I had such a feeling of respect for her theater. So I said, can we do it next summer? So she said, well, I think that's madness, but okay. So the next year I went up to work on the show, and Marin Mazzie, who went on to become quite a Broadway event, and Scott Bakula of theater and also film and television stardom. It was Marin's first show, and it was one of Scott's very first shows. And I was also in my mid-20s at the time. Josie de Guzman was the third member of the cast of that particular show I did at the White Barn. And so, like most of the people who have spoken tonight, I have a very special feeling about the theater. And it was mentioned before, just a moment ago, that you have the wonderful Children's Museum, you have the wonderful aquarium. I've always admired those aspects of Norwalk. I'm from Weston, and I thought, oh, it's incredible that a town like this has something like that. And I think that if you had a theater like the White Barn, it would be among those other two, another crown jewel, you know. I should mention as well, I don't want to talk too much about it because I think someone else is speaking about it, but my husband, Paul Bogave, who is an Emmy and Grammy winner and conducted many, many Broadway shows, also developed his skill at the White Barn in his mid-20s. So, as everyone was speaking about, all of us, not just the young children, but people in their 20s, 30s, and onward, could continue to develop their own work at a wonderful space like that. I was asked to read a letter from Tova Feldshuh, who's such a wonderful actress and Broadway star. Dear Waldo, she writes, for years, starting at the beginning of my career, the White Barn Theater was a shining light for artists like myself to try out developing work. In my case, Ms. Lortel was a patron of many of my one-woman shows. The White Barn was a godsend to small, daring, deserving works of theater, both musical and non-musical. I sang and acted on stage with delight for over 3 decades, and the idea of you possibly bringing it back to life would be an incredible asset to Norwalk and the entire theatrical community at large. Please bring the theater back, Waldo. Broadway will keep you company, as it did Ms. Lortel. With every good wish, Tova Feldshuh. One last just little thing is that those who knew Lucille well knew that she was not shy about talking about whatever she was producing at the time. And at least 3 or 4 times when I would bump into Lucille and ask her, what she was up to, she would say, well, I'll show you, dear. And out of her big purse, she would take the recent clippings of all the shows, and she would show me which ones were being developed and which ones had just come out of the White Barn. So I think if Lucille were here today, she'd be saying, well, look, there's this thing up at Norwalk Hall, and we've all got to get behind it. Thank you.
My name is Sandra Starr, and I live in Springfield Center, New York, which is 10 miles north of Cooperstown, New York. We have a summer opera house in my hometown called Glimmerglass Festival. But for 16 years, I was Miss Lortel's personal assistant and secretary at the White Barn Theater and in New York and in Moscow and London and Washington. We went around the world with a couple of plays. She loved dramatic theater. She loved theater that wasn't necessarily commercial. She wanted to give it an opportunity, and she did quite frequently. But it was really interesting when Mr. Falkenstein was talking about Paul Newman's production of Our Town. They did rehearse it at the White Barn Theater. One morning, I was then caretaking the property. It was after she passed away, and I was caretaking the property. And the stage manager, assistant stage manager, came over and said, "Sandra, we've locked the door to the dressing room, the one they were using for breaks, and we can't get in." So I had to call a locksmith to come and open the door. And as soon as the door was open, Mr. Newman dashed downstairs to make himself a cup of tea, and I thought that was incredible. Paul Newman drank tea. Once we had a letter delivered to the White Barn Theater. Joanne Woodward, Westport Theater, Westport, Connecticut. And it happened to be a Friday evening when they were having an opening at the Westport Country Playhouse, so I took the letter over. And after the show in the green room, I handed it to Mr. Newman, took it out of my hand, and he read it, and he howled, and he gave it to, he looking at the address, and he gave it to Joanne, and he says, "I think you need to read this." It was just a letter, I'm not even sure what was in it, but it was addressed to Joanne Woodward at the Westport Theater. No, the White Barn Theater, Westport, Connecticut. So I enjoyed being in professional theater with Lucille Lortel. The play that we took around the world was A Walk in the Woods, which was read at the O'Neill Theater Center, then produced at Yale Rep, and then done in La Jolla, California, tried out at Duke University, played on Broadway. We had, the Democratic Caucus came up, and we had a question and answer session one Sunday afternoon that was absolutely incredible. Then Sir Alec Guinness and Ed Herman did it in London, and the day the play closed in London, we opened Sam Waterston and Bob Prosky in Moscow. So that was what she did with the play, and that wasn't the only one she did it with. Fugard's Blood Knot opened off Broadway, and as she said, she put him up in her office. It opened off Broadway, The Blood Knot. James Earl Jones and Nicholas Custer, I believe, was the other actor, but Louis Gossett played in that role as well here in Westport at the White Barn Theater, in Norwalk at the White Barn Theater. And then it played on Broadway with Mr. Fugard and Seix Mokai. 25 years later, a quarter of a century after it opened off Broadway, it played on Broadway. That's the life of a play when Lucille gets her hands on it. I don't want to say too much more. I seriously enjoyed the White Barn Theater. The theater needs to be kept alive. It can be restored. To restore it is part of the thought from the very beginning when the Lucille Lortel and Waldo Mayo White Barn Foundation was established. And so with that in mind, please help us keep it going. Please help us arrange the time to get together and to raise the funding for the White Barn Theater to be restored, revived, and to reinstate a Lucille Lortel program, type of program. And before I sign off, I have a letter that I'd like to read from Jane Berger, who used to be the artistic director at the Darien Dinner Theater. Dear Waldo Mayo and the Foundation, Lucille Lortel was an inspiration to many, but to me in particular. She was my mentor who supported the work I did as COO of the Darien Dinner Theater, subsequently known as Connecticut's Broadway Theater, to revitalize the theater. Miss Lortel further encouraged me to be a Broadway producer. I attribute much of my success and Tony Awards to my many meetings and discussions with Miss Lortel. Living in Rowayton for many months of the year, I was able to attend the White Barn Theater and witness firsthand the enormous impact the theater had on the audience, actors, directors, playwrights, and producers. It was not only historic, but paved the way for future generations of audiences, actors, directors, playwrights, and producers. The White Barn Theater created an invaluable asset to the community. I am wholly in favor of restoring the White Barn Theater and most emphatically state that it would be a great loss to Connecticut not to do so. Sincerely, Jane Berger.
Thank you, Sandy. I couldn't have said it better myself.
We have the list, and I'll open it up to anybody who hasn't signed up to kind of speak at that point. The next, I have Gigi Van Dechter and Waldo Mayo. The names also appear twice later on. If you want to go now, you can, or if you want to go later.
Do we have to run this thing? Do you know how to run this thing? Good. Let's raise it up. What is he doing? To help with the different slides? Nah, just do it yourself. Oh. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming. The door's open. People are standing outside the door.
Come in, come in.
Everybody is still here. And I think that's a big testament to the energy in this room right now, and the history. So I want to start off by thanking you for holding this hearing. I want to thank Mr. Fieber and his representatives for being here and continuing the dialogue with us to be able to purchase the White Barn property and allow it to continue. This theater is not only a history that has great depth and meaning from all these people that you've heard tonight, but it's also a historic structure. It was built in 1850, and it was actually moved, and we're trying to figure out where it was moved from. But my great aunt and her husband, Lou Schweitzer, moved it and brought it to the property. Yes, Sandy, do you know?
It was removed from Brooks Corners in the middle of Westport, along a route that somehow managed to get the house on wheels to the site of the White Barn, where their mother.
So
it was good. It was moved. It was a working barn in the middle of Westport, and then he bought it to property.
So I think the structure has great meaning. I went out to the barn 2 years ago after being there when I was 10 years old, and I saw that it was still standing. And I had a feeling that I had to bring this back because nobody was paying attention to it. So I contacted Sandy Starr, and she gave me the number for Gigi Van Dechter, who's standing here next to me. And we had a conversation and started to create this journey together. And as you can see, you contact one person, and they know 10 other people. And those 10 other people know 5 other people. And it's people like Eric Falkenstein who come out of the woodworks. We didn't even know him. And Eric, you came to us and gave us a phone call and said, I think the community would love to be involved with this.
He's a Connecticut resident, and he heard about it. Like you, he came to us.
And Miss Jane Berger and Carmen and everybody. So it's got a deep history. I think that we need to bring it back.
The way I came to the project was because Sandy Starr is an age-old friend, because I became very good friends. Lucille was a mentor of mine when I was writing musicals with Earl Wilson Jr. I wrote a musical called Showgirls, in which Miss Schottenfeld's husband was performing Paul Bogave, and that's how I met Paul. And she's here tonight because of our association as well. And my experience brought me to television and film, and I produced and directed and wrote, and I also taught for many years alongside Irma Sandre and Maurizio Bustamante, and it's been an exciting turn of events that I met Lucille and that she did indeed nurture my career as well. The other thing is that she too, like Ms. Schottenfeld said, was that she was never afraid to advertise herself. In fact, I found her in that same situation with the pocketbook open and a picture. And I was at the National Arts Club with her, and she embarrassed the hell out of me. I was a young kid, and she was like, I was introducing her, this Mrs. Lotell, this Lotell, and she took out these, Sandy had made 50 copies of her with what's his name, the Italian wonderful, Sophia Loren, and there she is, taking pictures out, you know, and giving it to everyone. I was embarrassed, and she said, don't be embarrassed, darling, remember, the only person who's the best publicist is you for yourself. And I never forgot it. So that's why when I was called to this, I was really influenced by Lucille. And I think that the influence that she had was because we were able to work together, get to know each other in this intimate surrounding, which is Connecticut. I'm also a Connecticut Yankee, Hamden here. So I'm here because I believe in this state. I believe in the intelligence of this state. I believe in the artistic integrity of the state, and also the ecological basis of this state. It's a beautiful state. And I think we have to really consider that those three things come together like a wonderful union on the property of the White Barn Theater. And as you can see, we have two possible endings here. We have two possible possibilities here, not endings, possibilities. We have the White Barn Theater being preserved and going forward with the summer program that Lucille had, nurturing new and experimental plays and theater here of all kinds of arts, offering the community a possibility for arts revitalizing in their community with new and wonderful talent and experienced talent. So we're sort of the before and after, or the before and continuing, with the experience, and when we have someone like Waldo to continue this for the next 50 years, to make the White Barn reestablished as an icon of historic theater and new theater, and give these kids a chance to be members of that school of that great history. So we could either do that, or we could have 15 homes with 4 cars in the garage, and somebody is going to pay some taxes, and there will be some taxes. See, that's true. But we will also hire people. We will also have docents. We will also have a museum. We will also have many, 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 many benefits to this place. So I just think we should go forward from here. Let's see the next slide. So we have here, when was it founded?
1947.
300 productions produced. Over 400, sorry, we misquote, 400. Look at the people that have been here. Marilyn Monroe, Tennessee Williams, Eugene O'Neill, Edward Albee, Paul Newman, Al Pacino, Kevin Spacey. In fact, I have a letter from Kevin right here. May I? Kevin Spacey wrote, as a supporter of the arts and theater in general, I want to offer, just my support to the White Barn Theater in its mission to once again be a home for actors, producers, directors, writers, set designers, lighting directors, makeup technicians, and more. An outlet to create, to perform, and entertain. For the people, by the people. That's what this democratic process is about. Please consider the cultural value that this White Barn Theater will provide for the people of Norwalk. In great appreciation, Kevin Spacey. And this is a man who ran a theater too. He knows a few things. So this is important. This is important. So we would like to purchase that White Barn Theater. We'd like to be able to do that, but we need a reasonable amount of time to do it in. And we would like to renovate it and make it an ongoing, money-generating activity, such as Mr. Falkenstein suggested. If you have a play there, you get a piece of the action. There's taxes to be paid on that. There's money to be spent on that. There's revenues. This is not something that we're scarce in knowledge of. So think about that we can promote a successful operation.
And the first thing that we would do, if we were allowed to purchase this property and allowed the diligent time to purchase it, is we would put in the Lucille Lortel Museum so that it could become a community center for people visiting the community to go there, and we could sell tickets to this museum. And I think that would be a really good thing, not only for the city of Norwalk and Westport, but people around the country who love to come visit this beautiful town. And I love to come visit it because it's so quiet compared to the noisy, hectic city. And there's something magical about it. And this is a magical space. It has that certain energy to it. And if we can do that, and they can visit the museum, and we can reinstate the summer program, I think it would be a benefit to everybody.
And it would become a destination in Norwalk, much like your other wonderful destinations that were mentioned before, as the aquarium and the Children's Museum. It's a destination that's cultural, that adds quality of life to a city that always had it and just sort of lost it for a while. So I think it would be wonderful to regain that quality of life, that artistic quality of life, once again, don't you? We'd do a summer theater there, just like Lucille. We'd have wonderful new productions. We'd have wonderful new talent coming to perform there. We have access to all this wonderful talent. We know where to go. We've got all the people in this room. We have a barn. Let's put on a play. We could do it now. So we'd do that. We'd have workshops. We'd have master classes with people who would come for the day that you don't get to meet very often, that you don't have the chance to tap into their intelligence, their knowledge base, that you could come to. You could attend. Your children could attend. Your grandchildren could attend. It's something that we could give back to the community in a way that can no longer be done if this place is demolished. It would be multi-use. We'd have screenings of old and new films. We'd have a lot of things going on in a very small space that could be beautiful, exciting, and give back to your hearts and your minds. Give back to be proud that Norwalk has not demolished this place, but to walk out of here and say, we've given back to society, we've kept something alive that was nurtured for 50 years by a woman who gave a whole lot of time and money to this town, and a whole lot of effort, and why throw it away for the tissue of a few homes?
And there's something else to be said, because for I think around 12 to 15 years now, the barn has been sitting there. And thanks to organizations like Save Cranberry, they've been fighting and fighting and fighting year after year after year. I came into this a little less than 12 months ago, creating this foundation, reaching out to people like Gigi and Sandy and all the wonderful people in this room. I've had more phone calls in the last 3 days than I've had in the entire year last year. I want to help. I want to help. How can we help? How can we bring this together? So we've just started. This is just the beginning of continuing a legacy. And for 50 years, 400 productions, 15 years laying fallow, how can we knock this thing down? Time. A little bit of time. A win-win situation for both parties. And I think it can really be the future. Thank you.
Diane Keith, followed by John Levin.
My name is Diane Keefe. I live at 249 Chestnut Hill Road, which is in the neighborhood of the White Barn Theater. I am also a Quaker, so I was peripherally involved in the Connecticut Friends School. My kids didn't attend the school, but the Connecticut Friends School, in taking ownership of the property, had committed itself never to destroy the White Barn Theater. And over the years, I did attend many fundraisers for the Connecticut Friends School in the theater, so I know how big the ceilings are, how open it feels, how wonderful it would be to be inhabited again. And I know that no one paid taxes on the whole property while Connecticut Friends School had it, because Connecticut Friends School was a nonprofit. So the developer sold it to them in 2006. The stock market went down in 2008, plummeted. Property values all around here plummeted. And he got to sit there and clip coupons from Connecticut Friends School. I don't know how much money was involved, but he has not been hurt by sitting and waiting. And what I would like to see the city of Norwalk do is not rush to give this property away, because it hasn't been that long since Connecticut Friends School had to give up and close. That's been a great loss to us and the families that couldn't make that work out. And it would be a great loss to the neighborhood and the property values in the neighborhood. I can say that I've lived in Norwalk since getting married on my front lawn in 1991. I know that's 25 years ago because I'm about to have my silver anniversary this August. While I've been here, I've worked on a couple of different preservation issues. The most prominent sticks in my mind of Fodor Farm, historic farm property that the mayor of Norwalk at the time had the wisdom, after many of the activists around said, you know what? You don't have an organic farm possibility where field trips could come and have a discussion of organic farming. And you know what? People bought that in the mid-1990s. That was very progressive leadership. And so I'm looking to this commission to be progressive and say, here's an arts landmark with a woman in the arts who had great courage, great vision, and she identified tremendously talented people, and it was right here. They've already sold off the properties in Westport, because Westport, and I don't know how it happened that $2 million went to the Westport Country Playhouse. That's water under the bridge. I don't really want to go there. But I really feel like if we're going to ever borrow money for a cultural purpose as a city, I think this would be a great project for that at some point. But we need a pledge that this doesn't come back ever as the possibility of a development if we're going to keep on paying interest payments to developer. The other point I would raise is from the 1960s, Cranberry Park, which is a beautiful treasure of Norwalk, which has a beautiful house in it that happened to be featured in The Swimmer, which is a famous old movie. If you ever go around Cranberry Park, that almost got developed in the 1960s, but the city had the wisdom to buy it. So I think there's key moments. This is a key moment for the city of Norwalk to not rush to accommodate a developer and find a way to preserve this jewel. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is John Levin, and I also live at 249 Chestnut Hill Road, Norwalk, Connecticut, which is around the corner from the White Barn property. And I really want to thank the commission for spending your Wednesday night here and listening. I really think you guys do great work. It's thankless. And I'm aware that if everyone speaks tonight, this is going to be one heck of a long night. And my heart goes out to you and all of us, but I just want to say thank you. Your service is greatly appreciated and recognized. I'm just wondering, how many people have actually been inside the White Barn property? Would you just raise your hands to tell me? Okay, so it appears that no one currently on the Historical Commission has... Okay. So you have been inside. It is really an extraordinary building for Norwalk. And I believe that the White Barn Theater, that building, is architecturally and historically significant. It's significant like lots of other significant buildings throughout Fairfield County and throughout America. I would throw out another example. You might say, architecturally this might not be significant, but the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, which is now part of the National Civil Rights Museum. People might look at that and say, oh, we could tear that down and build something else. But it's historic and architecturally significant because of what happened there. And if you look at the White Barn Theater, it's clear that, and I've learned so much this evening, but it's clear that the White Barn Theater was really a major research and development facility for American theater. And it was almost like the Skunk Works of Broadway, if you will. The talent that was attracted there is historic and extraordinary. Many of those people are still alive, and many are not. But just to hear the names, Athol Fugard, Samuel Beckett, Arthur Miller, Eugene Ionesco had effectively conducted experiments there. I also know as a fact that Rod Serling and Paddy Chayefsky also conducted experiments there. They're among the most famous screenwriters and scriptwriters that our nation has ever had, and they were part of it. Just as the previous speaker said, this town was very successful and resourceful preserving the Fodor Farm property. It was about 25 years ago. Some of you had not even been in Norwalk then, but at the time it was the same thing. A developer owned the property and wished to turn it into cluster housing development project, tract homes. And the mayor and some of Norwalk's heroes came together and found the resources, the will, and the money, and have been able to preserve that property. And it is now an extraordinary resource for this city. And what I am asking is for this commission to please keep the wrecking ball away long enough for us to repeat that kind of success, preserve the White Barn Theater and the property so that it can become another future successful resource and carry on its legacy, the legacy of the people that have contributed to in the past, and can be renewed as an extraordinary experimental theater as it was once before. Please help us, we can do it, and all we need is the time and the money, and we'll get that.
Hello, I am going to yield my time because there's some people that have to leave, so I would like to be towards the end. I also want to tell you that I once lived at 249 Chestnut Hill Road, and with Diane and John, we were part of kind of an activist incubator and saving the Fodor Farm and the like, so I'm so happy they're here.
Vivian Sorval. The next person after that would be Jim Gordon.
I'm from Fairfield, far-flung Fairfield, but I grew up in Norwalk. I'm a member of Theater Artists Workshop in Norwalk. But I'm only a writer, and I'm going to keep this short. I'm going to read a quote coming from the esteemed producer, Edgar Lansbury. The White Barn Theater is an historic monument to American theater art and must be preserved. I celebrate what you are doing to preserve the White Barn. Thank you.
My name is Jim Gordon. I'm a playwright and a member of the Theater Artists Workshop also. I have just a sentence or two from an actor in New York who worked here. And I'd like to think he's probably one of a lot of, not great stars, but people who worked here over the years. And he says, the White Barn Theater is a cultural monument to the American theater. Its death chips away at the American soul. Not only should it be preserved, but it should be rededicated as a living force in our theater today. Lucille Lortel produced one of my first one-act plays as a young playwright. Please save and preserve the White Barn. Thank you.
Following Todd will be Christine B. Seagree.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Todd Bryant, 23 Morgan Avenue, Norwalk, Connecticut. I'm the president of the Norwalk Preservation Trust. And I certainly couldn't add anything to what's been said tonight. Certainly the importance and the iconic status of this theater has been established beyond anything I could possibly have imagined. I knew it was important. I didn't know it was this important. This is spectacular. What a great showing tonight. And my appeal is both to you to, of course, submit a recommendation to wherever it goes in the city to certainly preserve this theater, but also to Mr. Fieber through his, and I ask Mr. Nolan to be sure to transmit this to him, to please allow enough time for this effort to actually happen. I understand, if you look at the land records, the Friends School is still listed as the owner of record, so it's unlikely that he's paying taxes on this property, so he probably has some slack. I would like to see this, the negotiations between Waldo's group and Mr. Fieber continue in a good faith manner to see if this could actually come forward to the benefit of both parties, so that this cultural icon could be reinstated, and so that Mr. Fieber could also feel that he's done due diligence and kept his investors happy. So that's my plea to him tonight, and thank you all for coming out, and thank you for having the hearing.
Good evening, thank you. Christine Bisegli, 80 County Street in Norwalk. And I first want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, the artists here, what you've given to our society, to the United States, and to all the people. I appreciate it. I grew up with the arts. My mother's a ballet dancer. She's a ballet teacher in Weston, Connecticut. I've been surrounded by the arts all my life. She has her own dance company in Weston, the Young People's Creative Dance Theater. She has a stage in the woods. I'm not going to tell you how old she is, but she's still teaching, and she's a great patron of the arts. So that has been instilled in me, and she took me to the White Barn Theater as a young person, and I remember it very well. And my father also there's a park in Weston named after my father, and it's not because he had a lot of money, because he didn't. He had 6 children, and they had no place to play because we couldn't afford the country clubs, and the park is in his name. So that's a great legacy that I have, and for my father, his memory. And that's something that can be done here with Mr. Fieber, and perhaps it can be in his name with the land donated. It's a great gift to children and all children. I work with youth in Norwalk, in Stamford. I'm a high school guidance counselor, and I have kids interested in the theater. Many kids. I had a boy, a student of mine, who's a ballet dancer. He's currently on Broadway dancing, and it's a great enrichment to people's lives, the theater. I remember as a 5-year-old going to the Westport Country Playhouse, seeing Jack and the Beanstalk. I'll never forget it. I was mesmerized. And that's a richness that the artists have given us in our country, and that's what the youth need. And the history, someone spoke about the importance of history. How devastating to take this away from Norwalk. Norwalk is a historical town, has the greatest history in the state, this city. And what a wonderful thing it would be to have this historical place and to provide a museum or a current theater. And as a high school guidance counselor, I definitely could get you some free labor here as interns at the theater. And it would be well housed with young people, trust me, and they are eager. The young people are hungry. And it is up to us to give them what is really important in this life. Not the quick, happy fix with the money and the commercialism and the housing and all that and the real estate. It's sickening. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mary Jane Schaefer. I'm a member of the Theater Artists Workshop as both a writer and an actor. I'm here tonight partly to support the efforts of Mark Graham to help to secure a safe rescue, a period of peace where negotiations can be properly conducted and the White Barn Theater saved. A few years ago, Mark Graham and Peter Ling, in conjunction, conducted a wonderful tour of the White Barn Theater, which included a performance, and there were 2 interviews. One was of Lucille Lortel herself, played by Melody James, who had been, stand up, Melody, who had been a young actress years ago with the original, not that many years ago, but you know what I mean, how young people start. Excuse me, Melody, she'll speak to me again someday. She knew Lucille's mannerisms, and she presented her. I was cast at the last minute as Eva Le Gallienne, even though I'm probably a foot taller and not blonde, but we were able to get the job done. The audience was full. Those red seats were full of happy people who had lots of questions, and it really was a very vibrant experience, and I'm so honored that I was able to stand on that stage and work. Now, I want to read this letter from Paige Cameron, who could not be here tonight. It's dated March 1st, 2016. To whom it may concern, please accept my unconditional support for the preservation of the White Barn Theater as specifically intended by its founder, Lucille Lortel. Not only would departing from her wishes be unethical, but the fact that she took legal and financial steps to endow it in order to ensure this outcome should be binding on those who have been entrusted to carry out her wishes. As a professional writer and director, I urge you to think about what tradition and longevity mean to the arts in general and to the performing arts in particular. In my view, it is not nearly enough to read about the way someone did things. It is often the most enlightening to try to emulate their learning process in order to arrive on a more intricate and evolved plane within one's discipline. Such a system was devised by Ms. Lortel with the space of the White Barn as the absolute center of the process, essential and structurally the foundation necessary to the work she deemed valuable enough to support. What is at stake here is not just land. It is the potential decimation of an artist's conservatory that has been a source of light and safety for creative minds to flourish. This was Miss Lortel's intention and her achievement. Please preserve what she worked her entire life to leave to all of us. Respectfully yours, Paige Cameron.
My name is Barbara Smith. I'm a playwright, and I'm a resident of Norwalk and a former member of the Theater Artists Workshop. I've been asked to read a wonderful quote from a Tony Award-winning actress, Kelly O'Hara. And she says, as a new resident of Westport, Connecticut, I am excited and inspired by the idea of the White Barn Theater coming to life again. Thank you.
That concludes our speaker list. If there's anybody who didn't sign up to speak that would like to speak, just please come up to the podium.
Hi, I just wanted to give some of our New York neighbors time to get back home, so thank you.
State your name.
First, for the record, yes, my name is Diane Loricella, and I'm here tonight, first of all, to thank you for deciding to hold this hearing. Because you didn't have to, and we appreciate that. I'm going to paraphrase from a letter I'm going to give you. For the record, I also have that wonderful letter from Paige. Copies of it I'll give to your commission at the conclusion of my piece. I wanted to thank you for the decision to hold the hearing about this legacy property. I filed the request because I felt that all parties, including the City of Norwalk, needed to come together and find a way to preserve and revive this former incubator for the creative and social arts. I ask that this commission join us and vote to make several recommendations to the chief building official, as is your charge. In addition, I ask that you please assign some of your commission members to assist us in attempting to try to save this site. Please help us negotiate, because many of you have done this before. As a founding member of Save Cranberry Association, I have experienced the highs and the lows of a difficult 15-year slog of an effort to preserve a precious resource. I believe that the value in dollars earned with this kind of economic development will more than make up for the property taxes lost if the homes were built, in addition to the prestige and the cultural value. Both the buildings and the natural setting hold a symbiotic relationship, for it has been shown that calming natural environments can help stimulate the creative juices. Well, we saved 5.5 acres of the property for open space. Now, let us ensure that the rest of the property is saved in order to revive a cultural arts center. I filed this request because I was incredibly disappointed in the land use application process, fully expecting that the staff of the Conservation and Zoning Commissions and their commissioners would have been educated about existing land use plans, including the Master Plan of Conservation and Development, which I have my dog-eared copy here, as well as the mini master plan that many of us in this audience from the area put together, and we included the importance of this Lucille Lortel Theater as a cultural and natural and valuable process. The desired protection of this valuable cultural, historic, and natural resource is stated over and over again. Because the zoning application was a special permit, the fact that it does not comply, the 15 houses does not comply with the desires of the Master Plan of Conservation and Development, we thought was a huge thing. Unfortunately, the commission did not feel so. We feel they were incorrect. So that the barn building itself seemed to become an example of demolition by neglect. The conservation development regulations of the Zoning Commission need to be reformed because of the fact this applicant never should have been allowed to include land that the taxpayers paid them for, not to develop it in order to calculate the housing density, etc., as well as using the industrial utility right-of-way to calculate the density. All this did was kind of churn the mojo with people that felt that it is better to develop the site for houses than preserve the historic, relatively, the historic value. This revival project holds such great promise for Norwalk and its surrounding communities. Just today, I spoke with someone who runs Ballet Etudes. She told me that in the 60s and the 70s, she actually danced there as a kid, but she knows that Ballet Etudes was one of Lucille Lortel's they would come in and perform. She is willing, as many other groups like Musical Theater of Connecticut. There was some comments about we have too many theaters in this region. That is not true. They need to help each other. They all are unique. Ballet Etudes is a very unique place in Norwalk still. It was on Wall Street, now it's off of Westport Avenue. This could be just one other partner for the creative arts as a hub. The Revival Project holds such great promise for Norwalk. Finally, our society is realizing that the arts can help solve many of our social ills and are a crucial pathway for our youth to explore their future and solve their problems. STEAM, which is science, stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math curriculum, is becoming the new normal. Let us make sure that Norwalk schools do not lose out on the legacy that Lucille Lortel set out to achieve so many years ago when she dared to allow the controversial play, A Walk in the Woods, to be highlighted in a time of fear, and when she helped support those artists defending their freedoms during the McCarthy era. I once lived on Village Creek, another very historic place. It was once known as Commie Creek by the Republicans in town because there were so many people that were hauled before the McCarthy group. I gladly add my voice here tonight to the many who feel that we must save this White Barn Theater, and I appreciate you allowing us to be here tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melody James. I'm a member of the Theater Artists Workshop, and I thank you for holding this hearing. I want to just quickly share two very indelible memories. I feel very lucky. I grew up in Westport and Norwalk, and it was a time when there was a lot of cross-fertilization, particularly with the arts. My father was involved in the Norwalk Symphony, and there was a lot of adult hubbub about the White Barn. One evening, I got taken as a young student and still in school, and I saw Fugard's play, The Blood Knot, and it changed my life. It inspired me. It's many, many years ago, but I knew in that moment it was a kind of theater that was vibrant, provocative, made me think, and there was a sense of magic around the White Barn, that thoughts and ideas were always at play. I grew up knowing Ralph Alswang, who is the man who helped design and said, if you open the back door of the barn, you will see the forest. And it became a backdrop for some of the productions. When I came back from California in 1979, 1980, I was in a production at the White Barn Theater as a young actress. It was experimental. It was produced by Hala Stoddard, and Lucille was there in her seat, always watching. It was a place of good critique. It was a place where you could try new things and you could grow. And there aren't many Lucille Ortels or Arthur Millers or Marilyn Monroes for that hand, but we never know where the next artist that will really change the world come from. And one of the most critical things artists need is space and time and safe places to do their work. And I beg you to give space and time to this endeavor and help the torch be passed. Lucille Ortel built something quite extraordinary. She built it in New York with the Theatre de Lys, the beginning of the Obie Awards and the Off-Broadway Awards. This is a very important woman to the theater. But that place that she helped give birth to brought so many people together to do creative work together. And I know that this community would support that going forward. And we should pass the torch and let that happen. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, and you lovely people sitting here so patiently tonight. You've heard many, many impassioned speeches about Lucille Ortel, the theater, the saving of the theater, and so forth, of course, of which I all agree. I was an actress and then a producer. I ran the Darien Dinner Theater for a number of years, and then am now successfully producing on Broadway with Eric Falkenstein and some other people. In fact, as a matter of fact, I'm currently producing The Crucible. Thank you, Joan, for your brother, by Arthur Miller. The one point that I would like to make clear this evening, and thank you, Sandy Starr, for reading my letter this evening. Very nice. I'm delighted I could be here after all. I think, first of all, I've lived in Norwalk a long time, all my life, and I recognize how important the community of Norwalk is. The theater community is, as you can tell from these speeches tonight, is extremely passionate. But we're passionate as community members and members of Norwalk, Connecticut. It's amazing. And I think the most important thing that we can do by saving this theater is prepare our youth to have a place and an ability to have the self-esteem and the confidence to go forward and carry out our wishes and their wishes, more importantly, their wishes and their desires, and to help them get together with a better understanding of what life's about. This is what theater does for youth. I've recently produced a play, it was a musical, and it was done by 16-year-olds from Mexico City. Mexico City is a very difficult place to live in. And the Thomas Jefferson School was founded by actually an American woman who married a Mexican gentleman. And it has become the standard for what Harvard University now uses to use as a template for their children and people who are learning to live life properly and move forward with their lives. It keeps children from getting into trouble. It helps them excel in everything else they do. And if nothing else, this theater, by saving the Lucille Lortel White Barn Theater, if we could have an extension of this in this community of Norwalk, Connecticut, it would be quite extraordinary. And I think that's the passion that we need to have for our youth today. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Elaine McCarthy, and I'm finding it very difficult to sit still tonight and not come up and bring my voice into the conversation. I live at 300 Newtown Avenue, just down the road from the White Barn property. I bought my home with my husband 12 years ago. It is actually probably considered by all rights to be a tear down, but we've spent 12 years restoring this house that was originally, the original part is from 1790. But we also are theater professionals. So I look at this from two sides right now. I hear all these voices of my compadres within the theater community in New York City and all over the world. And I also wanted to speak up, most importantly, as a resident of Norwalk, a place where I aspire to be a lifelong resident. I hope to someday be carried out of my crazy old house in a simple pine box at the ripe old age of 110. But in the meanwhile, one of the first things that happened when we moved into our crazy old house 12 years ago was a leaf that was put in our mailbox saying, "Save Cranberry." We're like, save it from what? And it's not what a new homeowner wants to be hearing 2 days into homeownership. Well, it was a great lesson in homeownership, and it was a great lesson in being part of a community. And for all you theater artists here, you understand what it means to be part of a community, because if there's nothing else that theater does, it develops very intimate partnerships, communities that last as long as the production lasts, and then you move on to your next community. Well, Norwalk is my community. Norwalk is my husband's community. And most importantly, Norwalk is my 10-year-old daughter's community. And theater is also my daughter's community and my husband's community, my community. And I see here something so precious, not just to me, but to the city of Norwalk, which I've grown to really love, but I struggle with every day. Because Norwalk, what's amazing about Norwalk, among many other things, is there's a here. We have diversity that represents our country. We have, it's like New York City in the sense that you can walk down the street and you walk down the street and you can see Venezuelan beach food, Haitian food, you name it, we have it. And it's a melting pot. It's where people have come forever to work in its factories, and now to build its communities. People who come in the new diaspora come, they develop into the middle class, they stay here, they raise families here. It's an incredible, incredible community. However, as that kind of a community that offers opportunities, we don't have a lot of wealth compared to a lot of the communities surrounding us. So it's harder for us to hold on to these legacies. It's harder for us to hold on to these jewels like the White Barn, because we don't have the extra cash lying around to buy it and then build it. This would be amazing if this could become just that for Norwalk. It is, and not just Norwalk, but Fairfield County, because it's one of the few remaining properties that has the pond, that has the nature aspect, but it also has the arts aspect, and it also has the historical aspect, all these really important parts of what it means to be Norwalk. And I keep percolating about not only hearing how it can be a wonderful community in the summer for theater artists coming in from all over the world, but even more importantly, It can be an important percolating place for Crystal Theater, MTC, the high schools, the junior highs, the elementary schools, also during the academic year, Music Together, all of these wonderful programs that take place in various spots all over our city and all over Fairfield County can have one place that during the academic year, if it's not being used or in addition to being used by the likes of contemporary playwrights and artists, it can also be used by young people and community organizations to foster Norwalk as the melting pot, as the artist, as the place where there's a lot going on. It can really be a feather in our cap, like others have said, along with Stepping Stones, along with the aquarium. Because when you travel anywhere all over this country, when you say you're from Norwalk, Connecticut, a lot of people know the aquarium. A lot of people know the Stepping Stones. A lot of people know Stu Leonard's as well, which is also something to be proud of. But wouldn't it be wonderful to have one more place that people could say, oh, White Barn, another generation and generation and generation that could say, oh, Norwalk, Connecticut, isn't that where the White Barn property, isn't that where White Barn is going on? So I think that's all I had to say, but I couldn't sit still and I couldn't sit quiet all night and not speak as a parent, as a theater artist, and most importantly, as a resident of Norwalk, lifelong resident, future lifelong resident of Norwalk, Connecticut. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lana Turner. Really, it is. And I am not in the theater, actually. Although we both had the same birthday, but that's another side. But what I really do want to say, I don't live here. I live in Harlem. And when you talk about preserving and preservation and cultural institutions, they are in big places and they're in small places. And in places that I come from, the fights are still there. And in fact, my heart has just fallen because there was a cultural building in Harlem that was recently sold to a developer, and it will become an apartment building. I would say a banal apartment building, but an apartment building. And I suspect because people need to live someplace. But across the street, there's a McDonald's. I think they could have taken that. But the point of this is that it was a building that had great cultural significance to a community that was deprived because of the hard racial lines in the 1920s. So this was a building that was built by a black man who had a cleaning company, who was able to attract two other businessmen, who were able to put up one story of this building. That became retail. They were able to find enough money in 2 years to put up the second story, which then became the place where black people could, for the first time in Harlem, with all of its celebrated nature, could go and have a wedding anniversary, can go and dance to big bands, where it was not a place where someone said that you couldn't come because it was segregated, but it was the first place. That place was just torn down. And I watched women come out of the church. It was part of a church's development property. I watched them come out of there last year around Good Friday, when one part of that building was still standing there. And I watched them. I mean, they were not people who were rabble-rousers. They weren't people whose voices you would hear often. In fact, you wouldn't hear them at all. But I happened to stand there because I couldn't believe that that building was actually torn down. And I watched them pick up a brick to say, you know, I remember being in that place. And I remembered how important it was to me and my family. And this is all that's left. And I watched them pick up bricks to take home. No one should ever have to fight for places that mean something. For all the voices and all of the theater and all the things that Lucille Lortel put together. There shouldn't even be a hearing. There shouldn't even be save something. It should just be the thing that we do. Because underneath it all, when you buy a house, When you live in any community, the first thing you want to do is to exclaim how wonderful it is because you have museums, because you have a dance company, because you have a theater company. The fact that you can get on a train or drive your car to New York City and have it all makes a lot of where you are very rich. And to have something right in your midst that means so much, that spawned so much, is extraordinary. When I looked at the photographs of Carmen de Lavallade and Geoffrey Holder in their wedding ceremony, shortly after they met on Broadway in 1954, Truman Capote's play House of Flowers, Harold Arlen, that was where they met, and shortly afterwards they would get married, not in New York City, but here. When I look at those stunning photographs that were taken by Carl Van Vechten, that's a name that should resonate. Carl Van Vechten was a major art critic for the New York Times, for it seemed he probably lived forever, although I know that he has since passed on, forever, and that he would be here to chronicle all of the things that would go on at the White Barn. I think it is extraordinary that there are the vocal voices, that there are the numbers of people who've come forward to say, I remember when, and that it should absolutely be here. I think it's even more extraordinary that Waldo, who I think represents the future of not just the White Barn, but of our world, that he would take it upon himself in his youth to say, let me jump into something that means so much, albeit it was his great aunt. He didn't have to do it. He's a young kid. What does that say? It says to me that he has taken on the fierceness of his great aunt, who decided how important it was to give people a chance to do something that would be wonderful, but that in some ways would turn out to be extraordinary. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'll be brief, I swear. I'm a playwright and improv is interesting, but it's not my journey. For the record, my name is Gina Russell Tracy. I was born in Texas. I was raised in Wisconsin. I moved to California at the age of about 2. I moved to Connecticut by way of New York. I currently am a Connecticut taxpayer. In my almost 60 years, this is my birthday coming up on March 20th. Thank you. I've experienced a lot in this state. The death of children, the birth of children. I've lived in more than one home. I intend to probably live in another home besides the home I'm in. What you're experiencing tonight is that quality in Connecticut that we protect, which is the quality of home. This is really not an issue just for Norwalk at this point. This very well might be an issue that faces us as Americans. This particular site, this particular land, this particular legacy, these particular people, this particular home that Lucille Lortel turned over to an arts community and a political community and a tax-paying community might very well qualify as a site that might find itself on the National Register of Historic Sites. Tonight you are charged, the 6 of you, 3 women and 3 men, with a very weighty responsibility. You have the chance to be heroes tonight. I know a few heroes. I've met them. I've buried them. My husband works in the Fairfield Fire Department as the Assistant Chief of Training. He gave up a very promising career as an actor in New York and Los Angeles. He worked on the soaps, in commercials, and he saves such buildings, and he puts his life on the line for those buildings, whether they are new construction or old construction. We also have heroes who serve on boards and commissions, such as yourself. You find yourself running for office and maybe running on platforms of conservation. You're appointed, and you're appointed again. And we, the people, are appointing you now to become heroes. You've heard testimony tonight that answers some of these questions. You have the answers now. You know it in your heart. And your grandchildren and your children will question you as to your decisions. The questions are, what is history? How do we preserve it? Most importantly for the children, why do we preserve it? If you're a mother, if you're a father, if you're a grandfather, if you're a child who never met your father or mother, you hear about these people. Sometimes it is the people that you don't hear about, who don't have children, who have other children. These senior citizens out here, they are the children of the American theater and the American film industry and the television industry and the music industry and the dance industry, and our history in America in the last 200 years has riveted itself around leaders. We need leaders tonight. We need the 6 of you. We might need 5 of you. We might need 4 of you. Maybe we need 3 of you. Maybe like Lucille Lortel, we need 1 of you. I hung 2 juries in the state of Connecticut. And I had 2, thank you. And I had 2 judges who said, thank you. You were listening. That's all we wanted tonight. And I'm sure you did more than your share of that when you joined this commission. What we do want to know from you in your decision to forestall the acts here is, what do we learn from the past? And then the second question in the play of your life that you were writing tonight, I hope you answer this. What future do you see? Because we will be watching, we will be reading. My son is in a show tonight in Hamden, at Hamden Hall. He's in the 97th percentile in the world for reading. He's playing a lawyer. He's 17. It's the head of the Harvard Law School. He had the chance to meet Michael Rupert, who originated the role in Legally Blonde. He will be asking me tonight how the meeting went. And I should share this with you. There are books that he'll be able to read, or he'll be able to write. The O'Neill. This is written by a friend of mine, Jeffrey Sweet. It's very easy to come across, and you should flip through it before you decide that 1 house, 20 houses, 100 houses, a set of condominiums serve this country. There's another book I'd like you to read, and you can contact me or anyone else. It's called The Ogunquit Playhouse, 80 Years. It's in Maine. My son spent 7 summers there as a child, and the reason was because we don't have any programs here in Connecticut. Well, imagine if we didn't have to live in a pup tent for 2 weeks at a time, so he could learn what he wanted to learn about Disney, believe it or not. Disney. So my hat's off to Maine. My hat's off to Brad Kenny. My hat's off to every single person here in the arts community and the political community and the financial community who came here to invest in you, to give us tonight, for you to invest in your citizens here in Norwalk and in the state of Connecticut and the East Coast compared to the West Coast. And when you do your research and your history preservation, you think about it all, you're going to see that you are really reaching out to preserving this possibly facility or possibly land for the world. And I hope you wear your hero button loud, 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 loudly, because I want my son to clap for you next time he hears the decision from this commission. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
If you would allow me just a couple of brief comments on behalf of the Lucille Ortel and Waldo Mayo Foundation. I'm Steve Nevison. I represent the foundation. Your charge, which you read at the beginning, allows you to issue recommendations or alternatives to demolition to the chief building officer. And you've heard a lot of ideas here tonight that you could possibly consider and take your own initiative to consider or to recommend. Your charge also is to hopefully find some other reasonable alternative to the last resort demolition, and I think you've heard some of those here tonight. On behalf of the foundation, we hope that you will suggest, if not recommend, that everyone involved take their time before final decisions are made about the demolition, because before you tonight is an application to demolish the property as of March 23rd of this year, in just 3 weeks. So you have options, you have alternatives. We would hope that you would recommend to those who have applied for demolition that they take their time, that they explore alternatives. The foundation is prepared to do that, is very actively involved in looking at alternatives, and is prepared to sit down with the applicant for demolition and find alternatives. But we need time. And we hope that you will recommend that some way be found to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Peter Nolan, 2 Douglas Drive, Norwalk, representing Mr. Fieber and Special Properties 2, which is the developer of the project. I just want to report on the building. We had a study done about a year ago. It's not in great shape, so if these people are serious, they're going to have to do some serious work, and I'd like to hand that up. Pass that along to the building department. That was before last year's massive snows. That was before the asbestos that was rampant in the building was removed at my client's expense. So the building's in even worse shape than is reported there. So if it's going to be preserved, there's going to be serious dollars required to do that. I understand your charge here tonight is not to grant any application, not to delay anything that's already been done. The delay ordinance was extended from 90 days to 120 days 2 or 3 years ago to give more time to promote discussion. Surprisingly, we're not here on the 10th day or the 20th day. We're here on the 100th day. So again, if you people want to save this building, you have to move and move quickly. My client extended offers to the foundation under which he would transfer the property to the foundation. And that offer's been outstanding for many months. As far as I know, we have never gotten an answer. We've never got a counter proposal, and we've never got an answer to the outstanding offer. I checked with my client again tonight. That offer, despite all the money is spent on the applications to get this through zoning and conservation, is still on the table, unchanged as to exactly what he offered many months ago. We are willing to listen. He is willing to sell the property. What's required is money, frankly. And perhaps with all these people turning out and all the support from the New York theater community and the TV community and the film community, these are some very, very rich people outside Norwalk. They can help this foundation get the money to acquire the property. We will be reasonable, but my client has invested quite a bit in moving forward, and we can't wait forever. So we will we will listen, we will talk, and we have nothing against the theater. If they can come up the bucks, God bless. So hopefully the discussions will proceed. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
Yes. My name is Tom Saviano. I live in Westport and have lived there all my life. And I'd just like to say something about this report you people just read. I mean, just received. I've heard someone else here say that the building was moved to its present site in the 1800s. With the technology available then compared to what's available now, it would seem kind of ridiculous to say that the building could not be saved. If this building could be moved all the way from Westport to Norwalk, then I'm sure it could be reconstructed. And I'm an engineer and civil engineer, and I should know about things like that. So I'd just like you to add that into your ideas. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak before we close the public hearing?
My name's Peter Ling. I'm a professor of theatre from London in England. I discovered the White Barn Theatre by pure accident and have been involved in trying to save it ever since that time, about 5 years ago, when the Connecticut Friends School from Wilton were occupying the building. They kept the building in beautiful shape, and I think we should be grateful for that, because they did a great job, even though they couldn't raise the money to preserve it, restore it. It's now not in such a good shape, but it is not a ruin. It is salvageable. It is a beautiful building. It's extremely well built. There are many steels in it which are in very good condition, albeit has been neglected since the Friends left, and that is to my sadness and to our sadness. What I'd like to say, having listened to everybody here this evening, that though, of course, as our lawyer friend here says, it's all about the money, I think it's something more valuable than that we're talking about tonight. It's not. It's more valuable than money. That's it. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I spoke before, sort of this impromptu. There was an amazing thing happen. I realized that a moment ago that the reason I came out to this community, instead of choosing Spring Lake, New Jersey, I'm originally from New Jersey, or Prince,
Sorry, could you state your name for the record?
Yes, Barbara Schottenfeld. Okay. I'd spoken before. The reason I came out here was because of the White Barn Theater. Years after I did that show that was launched from there, I went on to other productions afterward. I suddenly was sitting here and I realized that I had 3 little boys very quickly, one after the other in New York. We really couldn't stay in New York and educate them the way we wanted to. And my husband and I were thinking about, where do we go? And we thought about New Jersey, we thought about various places in New Jersey. And then someone said, what about Westport, Connecticut, and that area? And I said, wow, isn't that far out of the city? And someone said, no, it's about an hour and 15 minutes by car, and take the train. And I said, well, I had a play produced out there, this wonderful theater. I really have a great feeling about that place. I think I'm gonna go. And I jumped on the train and I came out here and I called a couple of realtors, and we ended up in Weston for other reasons, but I just suddenly realized that if I hadn't done that show at the White Barn, I'd be living in Spring Lake, New Jersey or somewhere else. So anyway, it's that strong an element of my own life.
All right, if there are no other speakers, we will close the public hearing. Going once, going twice. Thank you everyone for attending. The hearing is now closed. I have a motion. Second. All right. Hearing is adjourned. Thank you.